O'Reilly. Are your wiper blades chattering, skipping, or squeaking? Don't let streaks or smearing on your windshield compromise your visibility. When it's time to replace your wiper blades, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and see our selection. Our professional parts people will even install your new wiper blades while you wait. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien, as always. But this is a brand new show and a brand new time. It's going to be weird for a while because of COVID-19. The coronavirus has shut down major parts of our society, parts of our country. And so here we are living in what my friend Joe Rogan would call strange times, strange as hell times. And we're all going through it to some level. You know, here at Meat Eater, here at the company I work for, that helps me host this podcast, we have a lot of employees that you know and love that are on this show, on other shows, that are quarantined at their homes, unable to come into work, unable to do the work that they do every day. This company has banned us from traveling, and that's the right thing to do. A lot of our live shows for the month of April, especially, and March, are getting canceled. Hopefully that we can reschedule those for all of you that wanted to come see the crew live and in color. But I think all of those are the right things to do. There is a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion, a lot of people wanting to control things. And I think we all know how that feels, and I certainly know how that feels. So I take all of that very seriously, to say the least. And I think the measures that this organization, this company has taken, and many other companies like it have taken, and that we've taken as a country on a national level, are appropriate. I feel that they are appropriate. But they're also kind of scary, and they change everything, and they make us just feel different. And so maybe every morning what this show can do, because we're going to go daily until this damn thing gets normalized. We're just going to do a daily podcast. We're going to talk hunting stories. We're going to talk with great guests. We're going to have laughs. We're going to make jokes. We're going to have contests. We're going to be as normal as we can within the time you're listening to this show. Because everything else is going to seem crazy around you. Feel free to come here and hang out with us. We're going to have a good time. Phil, the engineer, is at home with his family. He's also on quarantine and working from home. And it's going to be, we'll try to check in with him, make sure we get him on the phone a couple of times this week and see what he's up to. Same with Steve Ranella, Yanni Patelis, other people within our group that we got to call, check up on, make sure they're good, make sure they're still having a good time wherever they may be. So that's THC Daily Quarantine Podcast. That's what you're going to hear every single morning from Monday to Friday until this freaking thing is over. We're going to go hard, and we're going to make some good content. So hopefully you stick around with us. The last thing I'll say before we get into our guest today is let's use this time to come together. Let's use this time to understand what binds us, not what drives us apart. There's some in the media, there's some out there on social media as well that would like to tell you that this is a time to point fingers. This is a time to blame. This is a time to retreat into your ideological corners. I don't believe it's that time at all. I'm going to focus on my community, my family, the people around me, the people I love, and the people that I can affect. And I'm going to do that with as much positivity and sensibility and pragmatism as I possibly can. It's good. It's hard. As I said, it's confusing. It feels like there's just a danger in the air. Everything just feels different. But if we all hunker down, do what we need to do, have a good time on this podcast, it'll be over as soon as we know it. We'll be back to turkey season. We'll be back to picking morels. We'll be back to doing the things that we love to do. And luckily, going outside is probably not going to be something that they ban ever. So hunting is the way to go. All right. This episode, my buddy, Sam Soholt. You've heard him. He's the public land bus guy. I've known him for years. He's one of my best friends on the earth. We're going to tell hunting stories. We're going to talk shit. We're going to tell you about the time we went to British Columbia with Joe Rogan. We ate raw heart. We watched Joe chase moose on by his feet, trying to run towards a moose I had just killed, and a bunch of other things. We shot a cover for a magazine. It was a hell of a time. We got drunk on spiced rum. What a great time in British Columbia. Enjoy that story with my buddy Sam Soholt right now. What's up, Samuel?
Not a whole lot. Just, enjoying a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning.
Well, welcome to first ever THC Quarantine Daily. A podcast.
I'm excited. I'm excited I get to be the one that kicks it off.
You're the one that kicks it off. And this is where I'm just stuck in the podcast studio alone because Phil's at home with his family. I'm stuck here. I'm just going to podcast like a telethon for the next however long it takes. However long it takes.
Are you raising money for anything, or are you just talking?
No, no, I don't. I'm just buying my own White Claw, and that's it. And so here, I'll open. I already told you I was drinking one. I'm gonna have a second. Have a second one. Oh yeah. Everybody. I feel like everybody at this point in time has got to be feeling a little bit of anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Even as confident as a person I am, like if I get sick and I go, oh well. I still feel like the level of insecurity and anxiety is at a peak. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, no, I'm right in the same boat. Like I like every year this time of year, like when the seasons change, I typically get like a pretty decent chest cold. Like it just happens. I know it's coming at some point. So that started on Tuesday. Like I started to get a cold, and I was like, oh man, like I've got travel plans and stuff. Like I'm not really worried about me, but like if I get on a plane and cough, I'm worried like people are going to like point a finger at me and like push me out of the way or something. It's just a weird, like you just start to think about stuff irrationally.
Yeah. It's a weird time. And it has, like I said, as Mr. Rogan says, who we'll speak about here in a moment.
Yep.
At our first meeting of that fella. As he said, strange times. It's just strange times. My wife and I and sons went to Barnes & Noble last night to get some puzzles and games and books and such. And it was just like a vibe, a weird people around, like people were just like taking a wide berth. And so, like, especially I think little kids, where normally people would be like, oh, a little kid, I'll give him a high five. And just, you just tell, that tells. So it is the weirdest of times. But as I said earlier, as long as it doesn't impede our turkey season, which it probably won't.
That's right.
Because we can just go outside.
Yeah, it shouldn't. And mostly because we'll be driving everywhere for turkey season, which helps.
That's true. Yeah, I canceled my Texas trip, which is a sad, sad moment for me. But I had to do it.
Yep.
So now I'm thinking of I'm coming to your, if you're in the West, I'm coming to your state to turkey hunt. I'm not just staying in Montana. I'm spreading it out. I have to.
Well, the nice thing about being in Montana is if you wanted to, you could kill 5 birds there without,
Yep.
Without leaving.
I figured, my 10 bird goal, which I've kind of resigned to always having and maybe never achieving. Like Charles Barkley trying to get an NBA title. So he's just not gonna. Yeah. I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep saying it, but it's probably never gonna happen. I figure if I could get 5 in Montana, if I could get 1 in South Dakota, 2 in Nebraska, 2 in Oregon, I got 10 right there.
Yeah, that's true.
So numbers wise, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, on paper.
On paper, it's a piece of cake, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right, well, you know what we should talk about before we get into anything else? 2 things we got to talk about. One, the public land van. You just got this thing. You were just in town. We hung out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You got this thing wrapped. First, we should say, just in case no one knows who Sam is, you should say like who you are, what you did with the bus, and then what's going on with the van.
Yeah. So I've been on the podcast before, but I'm Sam Soholt. I've been kind of a major public land advocate over the last few years. And that included turning an old school bus into my rolling hunting shack and using it as a billboard to raise awareness about public land issues. And over the last 6 months have kind of transitioned from the bus into something a little bit more mobile, which is a 15-passenger Chevy Express van, which has been converted to four-wheel drive. And we just had it out in Bozeman and got the exterior wrapped, kind of same color scheme as the bus, just a little bit different lines. And the next step is to do the interior build out, and then obviously more accessories and stuff on the exterior, but basically creating a mini version of the public land bus and using it as the public land van.
Public land van. Yeah, we hunted out of the public land van when it was more just like like a van at that point.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. You were the first guest in the van, so it still had all the carpet and the paneling and everything inside. So
yeah, we both slept in. At least I slept on the ground.
It was four-wheel drive, but that's about it.
Well, I'm looking forward to all the crazy things you're going to do to it. And then, what other plans with the van? Anything else?
Just getting the build out done, and then kind of using that to spend time on public land and document all the adventures and continue to raise awareness and raise dollars for conservation and public land protection.
Well, here's something. We both attended a rally for when you were here for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And I said for THC Quarantine Daily, we were we're not gonna get political or controversial. We're just gonna have a good time. But I feel like the Land and Water Conservation Fund, as it is now, and the bill that's going around S3422, aren't political. We should it's nothing to get upset about. This is something we should all gather around, right?
Yeah. I think it's something that everybody needs to hear about too, if they haven't already. I mean, it's a pretty amazing bill that's going to be rolling through the Senate here.
Okay, well, I can handle the bill. You tell people Land and Water Conservation Fund. What the hell is that thing?
Sure. So Land and Water Conservation Fund was started in 1964, and it's a royalty fund, or it's a fund that's generated primarily based off the royalties of offshore oil exploration. So it's basically they thought, because we're extracting one resource, we want to invest some of that money back into protecting other resources. And so they passed into law that each year the Land and Water Conservation Fund could be funded up to $900 million a year. And then that money goes to the entire nation and used for things like fishing access points, hunting access, but above and beyond that, ball fields, parks, soccer fields. I mean, like, you name it. There's the cool thing about the LWCF is every single county in the has benefited from those dollars coming out of that fund.
Yeah, it's bipartisan even in its idea, right? The idea that if you lean left and you really don't, you're against extraction or against mining and those types of things, fracking, all that. Let's say you lean that way. Well, this is making sure that even though we're doing these things offshore, we're taking that money and plugging it back into our system. We're plugging it back into our communities to make our communities better. Say you lean the other way. Say you lean right, and you're into this stuff. Well, this is one way to go back and justify what's going on with these offshore oil rigs and offshore oil drilling, to say like the royalties here are being passed back to the American people. So either way you lean, I can paint this as a positive for the way you approach these issues. And so this thing hasn't really ever been funded as it is. So explain to people how funding might work, and the fact that this thing has only once, I believe, ever been fully funded.
Yeah. So like I said before, it can be funded up to $900 million a year. But I'm pretty sure that has only happened once, maybe twice in the last 56 years.
I think once. It was like 1998, maybe, something like that. I can't remember. But yes.
I think it was once is what they said at the rally.
Yep.
So Yeah, so it's only been funded once, which basically is, it leaves a lot of people in limbo when you don't know exactly how much money is going to be coming from the fund each year. And so, about a month ago, they had proposed to cut that even more, up to 97%. And so the LWCF would have only been funded roughly $15 million a year instead of the $900 million that it could be funded. And then obviously I'll let you take it over about what S3422 does, which was a complete 180 for the administration.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we here at Media reported that President Donald Trump, when I say Trump, if you're not aware who I'm talking about, President Donald J. Trump. Is it J. Trump? Yeah. Tweeted support of the LWCF. Number one, it's nice to see the President of the United States acknowledging things that we care deeply about. Number one, like that alignment is wonderful. At this point, the thing to fight for the LWCF is that full funding that you mentioned, right? So a bunch of senators, bipartisan, showing this bipartisan solidarity that you rarely see. Senators Manchin from West Virginia, Gardner from Colorado, Warner from Virginia. Those folks are all Democrat, Republican, Democrat. Daines from Montana, here in Montana. Heinrich from New Mexico, and Portman from Ohio introduced this Great American Outdoors Act, which is more beautifully known as S3422. And that's something you should all remember. And S3422 does some things, but it's simply, in terms of the LWCF, it would fully fund through 2025, the fiscal year 2025, $900 million annually for that LWCF. It would appropriate all $900 million of that to what we just talked about, to parks, to ball fields, to fishing access sites, to hunting easements, to all the things that we know and love from a hunting, angling level, but also just to our personal lives. My kid plays in a park in Bozeman called the Dinosaur Park that was funded by the LWCF. So it stretches well across. But I would think even just as big, this is another thing that this does that's been a huge issue for conservation and public lands for a long time. It provides $1.9 billion annually through 2025 to address this backlog, this maintenance backlog that's happening in our national parks, our through the U.S. Forest Service and our public lands and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the BLM on state lands. There's just a maintenance backlog, and you're talking about falling down buildings, restrooms, roads, trails, everything that needs repaired. There's been this huge backlog, and been one of the things that I've talked about with the folks at BHA a lot in our meetings and conversations. And so that's what S422 would essentially provide roughly, $2.8 billion for conservation. That's what it would do. It's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing to see that dollar amount on an annual basis fiscally put into conservation, and to see Republicans and Democrats all cheering for it.
Right.
And you posted a lot of things about what can people do to support this bill.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. If you go to the BHA website, obviously they have links where you can email your senators directly. If you don't want to go through the anguish of looking up a link, you can dial, I'll just look it up right here. You can actually call directly the U.S. Senate at 202-224-3121, and it takes you to basically a operator, and then you can ask to talk to your state senator. And you can leave a message and just basically encourage your senators to vote yes on Senate Bill 3422.
Give me that number again.
Yep. 202-224-3121.
21. All right. When we get off the phone with you, since I'm going to be locked in here, I'm going to call that number. And while we're recording, we're going to leave a message.
Yep. Okay, and it's super easy. I called last week and left messages for my senators and just made sure that they knew, how I felt about the issue, and just wanted them to vote yes. And it's simple. Typically you're not going to end up talking directly to your senator. You're going to talk to an aide or some, a secretary. But yeah, it's still, they keep track of all of those calls, and they know that when, for every person that either sends an email or makes a phone call, there's another 1,000 of us out there that are thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and we feel like from just a blocking and tackling level, will this thing get passed? It feels really good. It's got the bipartisan support from a number of senators. It only needs, I think, 6 more senators to sign on for it to get pushed through, relatively unchallenged. It seems like the president will sign it with no problem at all, much like the public lands package we discussed on this podcast, last year. This seems like something that could fly through the House and the Senate.
Mm-hmm. And to be perfectly honest, I feel like both sides could really use a win at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And this is certainly a win.
Yeah. And we're only in a good spot for our community when we become the win for politicians, when we have spoken up enough and gotten behind something that is uniquely American to the point where we are seen as something that, the things we care about, allow politicians from both sides of the aisle to coalesce. I think that's a bigger thing than most of us could ever understand. It's huge. It's huge for conservation. It's huge for public lands. I hope it stays this way forever. But you and I and everyone else that thinks like us are going to continue to push because that's the only way it will stay that way. It's the only way that we're going to get what we want. If we call these senators, we call our congressmen, and we tell them this is what we want, go do it for us.
Yeah. And I was having a conversation with somebody about it a couple of days ago, and just the fact that if this all goes through and the $900 million for the LWCF is funded fully, like the amount of other dollars that can be leveraged off of knowing that full amount is going to be there. I mean, it really doubles or triples or quadruples the amount of conservation dollars that go back into it from matched funds from other organizations, state dollars, different avenues that people will match for certain projects.
Yeah. It's these things have a way of becoming a groundswell, and also just for all of us, even in a political spirit, to point to this thing is like this is along with this. This really reminds me of Pittman Robertson, Dingell Johnson, those type of things. Like we are taking the funds that we're collecting, and we are driving them to a local level and doing good for conservation. It's a very similar concept, and one that's worked well with both these legislations for decades. And so we have right now 56 senators. I just wanted to look that up. 56 senators, which is a majority of the U.S. Senate on this bill. And so we need to convince the rest of them so we don't have to we don't have to worry about. We do not have to worry about this going through one way or the other.
No.
And so we'll leave that behind. Just while you're quarantined or while you're sitting around, this is something to think about. It's all positive. Yep. As I said before, no matter what you think about public lands or what you think about politics, this is something that we can all come together around, and this is a great time to come together around anything. And so look up that, and we'll at some point later in THC Daily Quarantine. I probably won't call today. Now I realize it's Sunday. Nobody's going to be there. I don't know. Maybe call tomorrow. But we're going to call that number. We're going to leave a message here on the show, and we're going to see who we can talk to, and see how far we get. But I would encourage everybody to take a few minutes to do the same thing. All right, now, Sam, I think we've probably talked about while recording a podcast the story we're about to tell. I can't imagine we haven't covered. I
think we have
most.
We've
of it.
covered it, but I think it's been very briefly.
It's piecemeal.
I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, we covered a little bit of this. We laughed about it in the context of other conversations. We've never really sat down and just straight up told the whole story. And we didn't confer on this beforehand. I'd be interested to see how we remember it, if we remember it the same way, or based on that. What was that spice rum we were drinking?
Spice Box.
Spice Box. So based on how much Spice Box we consumed, whether even we remember parts of it at all. Yeah. So I want to start kind of at the end. Because I watch a show called This Is Us. If anybody watched that show, it makes me cry all the time. But they bounce around in time. So that's what we're going to do as we tell these hunting stories on the THC Daily Quarantine podcast. I want to start with the moment that you looked up out of the truck. I think you were probably in the truck. You might have gotten out at this point. You looked up and you saw the famous comedian, host of Fear Factor, podcaster Joe Rogan, running down a muddy road in British Columbia with his Sitka jacket flapping in the breeze as he sprinted toward a freshly fallen bull moose.
So in preparation for this podcast, I pulled up the original, I went back and found an old hard drive that I have all these photos on. And I pulled up all 2,500 photos that I shot that week. And that was one of the first ones I was looking for, was when Rogan was literally sprinting down the road. Yep, there it is right there.
Yeah, I remember that image. It's burned into my brain. I just remember like his jacket is flapping in the breeze and he's sprinting down this road.
Yeah, and when this podcast airs, I'm not sure when you're posting it, but I will re-edit this photo and post it and push people that way so they can hear the rest of the story. But
yeah, I'll probably bother you to. Yeah. We're going to post it tomorrow morning, Monday. So you're listening to this on Monday. Yep. I will post. I will bother you for some select images from this hunt. We'll share them up on my social too, because you just need to see some of the things that happened on this hunt. But anyway, from your perspective, you look up, and there goes Joe sprinting. I mean, the moose is maybe 200 yards from our position at this point. Mm-hmm. But there goes Joe.
I'm glad I at least captured one image of it, because at this point, like, we were, it's at towards the end of the hunt. And so we're driving down the road, end up spotting two moose. I'm in the back seat. Joe's in the back seat next to me. You're in the front seat. We all stop. Everyone bails out of the truck. You shoot the moose, and then literally the next thing is Joe is sprinting down the road.
Yeah. Yes. From my angle, these two moose run across the road way ahead of us. They get up to our right. This is like a logging road in the middle of, central British Columbia. And it's at this point, it's been a relatively tough hunt. It hasn't been what we expected. But when we look up and see two bull moose, and at this point in my life, I hadn't laid eyes on that many moose. Especially, decently mature bull moose as these two were. It was a shock of all shocks. Our guide, Mike Hawkridge, slams on the brakes. I jump out. I'm up, down the bar ditch, up the other side. I'm tracking these bulls. They kind of stop out in this meadow. Sorry, I'm burping a White Claw. They stop out in this meadow, and I remember I had I'm forgetting, a straight pull action rifle. I'll think of a Blaser straight pull action rifle, and that means the action pulls straight back, ejects the cartridge, or ejects the case, and then you push it straight back in. So man, you can get rolling with this thing. So I'm up fully. I'm at a standing position. These two moose stop at a couple hundred yards, and I shoot. Hit it in the shoulder, rack another round in, and almost instantly shoot, hit it in the shoulder again, rack another round in. It's still kind of up. I shoot again, hit it somewhere high in the shoulder the third time. It falls down, and by the time I'm able to eject the third case and look down the road toward where the bull had fallen, there is Joe Rogan, who has jumped out of the truck and is now running down the road toward this moose.
And I think later, we were going through images, and he's like, I don't know what happened. I just I guess I'm running.
Yeah. It's like, I started running. And so from your point of view, what happened next?
Joe sprints down the road, and then you and I and Mike hop back in the truck and basically just rode up to catch up with Joe, and obviously your moose was down not too far off the road. And so we ripped down the road, but it was kind of later in the afternoon. And since we were so close to the moose, we opted to, rather than skin it, quarter it out, do all that stuff, we took a few photos, and then we cut the moose in half. And then all four of us loaded it in the pickup, and we were on the way back to camp.
I have a video of me asking Joe to describe this. Okay, tell the story of Ben O'Brien's moose, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Go.
Okay. We were having a good time, laughing, joking. All of a sudden, Mike goes, "Holy shit, two bulls!" We stop the truck. You jump out. Within 10 seconds, the first shot goes off. Boom! The moose drops. I don't know. I might have yelled, shoot him again or something. Who knows what happened? The moose dropped. You got this crazy gun, so you're unloaded. Bang, bang. You hit him about at least 3 times. You shot about 4 shots, and then I don't even realize I'm running. I'm halfway to the bull. It's down. It's kicking, and I'm halfway there, and I'm like, I guess I'm running. So I just keep running. And so I get there. I don't know why. I guess I wanted to be there when it died. I don't know why. So I get there, and this enormous fucking horse on steroids is lying there with 2 saloon doors growing out of the side of its fucking head. And we get there. We gut it. We take the organs out that we want. We saw it in half. We pick the pieces up, throw it in the back of the truck, close the tailgate. We're back home in an hour and 20 minutes.
That description was in the middle of our spice box experiment. I could watch that video forever. I don't know how to get that video. I only have that video on Facebook. I don't know how to get that off of Facebook. If I can, I'll post that too. I'll have somebody figure it out.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there because they're great and they're super friendly and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
But yeah, this is the day, I think the day before we leave. And we have just essentially a day left to hunt. And we had not seen a branch antlered bull moose at all before this. And so, yeah, we get up to it. It has died kind of in a weird spot off the road. And we feel like we can just back the truck up to it, cut it in half, and all four of us could lift this moose into the back of Mike Hawkridge's
and
shitty
even that
pickup.
Was a struggle. Like, do you remember, like, when we were gutting that thing, do you remember how big, like, so those 2 bulls were standing basically in an old clear cut. And so it was like half growth pine.
Yeah.
And they were eating the tops off of all of those pine trees. And I don't know if you remember how big the stomach was in that thing when we pulled it out.
Oh yeah.
But it was like an extra large physio ball full of those pine needle tops. or pine tree tops. It was insane. Like, I'll never forget that.
I'll never. No. And I remember pulling the organs out and just being, and for me, it had never, I don't know if you at that point had ever killed a moose, but I'd never shot a moose.
No.
I did not. And
No.
I had been traveled around and killed a lot of big game animals at that point. Even then, it's five years ago, according to this Facebook post I was just looking at. 5 years ago, had to be more than that. 6 years ago now.
Yep,
And
6 years ago, 2014.
Yep. And so at this point, I was, and we're talking a central Canada or central British Columbia moose. We're not talking a Yukon moose here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a totally different animal. But even then, to me, this is a giant bull. And I just remember being, as you can hear from Joe's voice, we were all just kind of like, that just happened. That happened. And even on the ride back, I remember just like, did we have two halves of a moose in the back of the truck? It was one of those things that it had gone by that quickly. And that was kind of,
Yep.
I think we could just keep going because then we'll get to exactly how this all came to be here soon. But so we get back in the truck. As Joe said there, thanks, Joe, for joining the podcast against your will. An hour and 20 minutes. We're back home, back to the little house we're staying on, this little homestead with Mike Hawkridge, who's our guide. And it was like a party. We just erupted. Because I think that hunt, I don't know if you can agree with this, it's like one of the better group dynamics I've ever been a part of. Like we had a good damn time. Like we had a blast. We laughed the whole time.
I mean, the majority of the hunt, like it was November, and so it was kind of like post rut.
Yeah,
and
like
so
post rut.
We were covering a lot of ground, and so we were doing a lot of just driving from cut block to cut block to cut block, just glassing and calling and looking. And I mean, we covered. It was basically we spent a week in the truck together, like just getting to know each other, which was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's 2014, and Joe Rogan is a known entity. He's a celebrity, but he wasn't where he is now.
No.
We talked a lot
true.
about podcasting. In fact, this trip was one of the trips where, as you'll remember, Joe kept convincing me to start a podcast. Like, you should start a podcast. You're funny. You could do it. You should start a podcast. I'll help you. And by the time this thing was over, I was fully convinced I was going to start a podcast. Like I told my girlfriend at the time, now wife, I was going to do it, and then never did it. to this, didn't do it for years. I mean, this podcast was for 2 years. That's 4 years of time where I could have been doing this. That I, with that man's support, that like I just wasn't doing it. So it's a professionally probably a time where I screwed it up big time. But THC wouldn't be what it is today anyway. But yes, so we get back to this little lodge. There's an assistant guide. If you remember his name, I don't. What was his name?
Travis.
Travis was there.
But he also liked to go by Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt. And boy, does he look like Joe Dirt too. If he ever listens to this, I love you, buddy. But boy, he looks just like Joe Dirt. Kind of acts like him too in a little way. Sweet dude. Nice guy. And then I think some of Mike Hawkridge's, his wife and kids were there at some level. But it immediately became, I think because we had such a great time, we had this like furious end, this like we had really wanted success, a lot riding on this hunt for me and for you and I guess for everybody. We all loved each other, cared about each other. We had a great time and we just let it loose when we got back.
Yeah, we did indeed.
In the way that we had the moose heart. Joe chops the moose heart up, starts cooking it, chops the liver up, starts cooking it, and we break out this bottle of Spice Box. Was it rum or was it something else?
No, it was a rum.
It was rum. I just remember the taste. I thought it was like, this tastes like turpentine. This is the most awful trash gut rum that could ever be made. Like it just was just awful. But we proceeded to drink, I don't know how many bottles of it, enough to...
it was a lot, yeah.
Enough to fully black out. To the point where I was trying to remember, I remember later on, trying to remember everything that happened to write. I was writing an article at the time. I worked for Peterson's Hunting Magazine. to write this article, and I felt like I had to start the article at this moment, this like celebratory moment, because the idea behind the article was tracing this all the way back. Steven Rinella introduced Joe Rogan to hunting. Steven Rinella introduced Joe Rogan to me when I asked him, like, hey, do you know any celebrity type guys that like hunt and just do it for the meat? And he brought up the Fear Factor guy. And I was like, oh, crap. So we'll get to how that all went down soon. But, it's funny. I just looked over in the podcast studio and there's a picture of me and Joe with that moose, right? Right to the right to my right
on the wall.
Yeah, right to my right. They asked us like send in a grip and grin that you think is cool, and I did. They put it on the wall. Anyhow, when I'm trying to write this article later, we had drank so much that there's so much of that I couldn't remember. I was like, I've blacked out for like the most. As a journalist, you don't really want to black out during parts of your story.
It's frowned upon.
So from that night, you have any? I just remember there being a beaver at some point.
Yeah, dude, I was gonna bring that up. Like all of a sudden, that like somebody like just walks back through the door. But this isn't just any beaver. It's
like the biggest beaver, right?
It was giant. Yeah, I have no idea how many pounds that thing was, but it was. I mean, it had to be close to 4 feet long.
Yeah, it was. I just remember Mike Hawkridge is our guide, and we'll kind of describe the kind of guy he is here coming up. But he comes walking in the door and just like plops a fucking beaver on the ground, and the beaver like it's sitting up like it was alive, and it's 2-3 feet tall. It's the biggest beaver I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and we're in a drunken haze. We're laughing, we're joking. I'm filming that video we just heard from Joe. We're eating moose heart, we're eating moose liver. We're laughing. I just remember like it was some of the best times. One of the best like post hunt experiences I ever had. And so I just want to read. I wrote this story. I'll also post a link to this story. It was published April 10th, 2015, for Peterson's Hunting and their magazine, their website, and we'll get to exactly how that came to be. But I said this. I said he sat across. This is the beginning of the story. He sat across from the table from me, tall in his chair, looking satisfied, seemingly unable to remove the triumph from his face. It was Joe Rogan's expression. It wasn't just Joe Rogan's expression that read of victory, though. It was his whole demeanor. For a man who's part comedian, part fighter, it was a damn good time to be the former, to sit back with his fellow hunters and enjoy, or better yet, revel. Rogan's plate was overflowing with wild organs. Thick, juicy slices of fresh moose heart sat steaming beside that same animal's liver, smothered in grilled onions. Beyond this first plate of wild protein, there was so much more. And the stand-up comedian, actor, martial artist, UFC commentator, and podcaster would be enjoying it all. Though Rogan has spent some of his time in Hollywood, there'd be no private chefs to prepare his backstraps. He hunts, kills, butchers, and eats his own meat, joining thousands of other converts in a movement that cannot be ignored. Eat what you kill is its mantra, and its front man is the dude sitting in front of me, devouring a bloody moose heart. Anyway, that was the beginning of the story. And this whole thing, the beginning of this whole thing, Sam, was around, funny enough, I sit here now working for Steve Rinella at a company called Meat Eater. And at this moment, we're kind of celebrating an eat what you kill movement. And that's kind of what brought us all to British Columbia, or at least, kind of what was the reason why I wanted to go there and why we hired you to come and shoot photos, and then why we called Mike Hawkridge and Joe Rogan. We wanted to kind of make a statement about this movement that was coming up 6 years ago. Really, I think probably started by Steve Rinella, adopted by so many people, including Joe. And so it's a good time to kind of go back to how this all began. You and I didn't really know each other prior to this hunt, right? We had never met.
No, we had never met. I was actually thinking about how all that went down. And so it was like early in October that same year. I was out in West Virginia on a photo shoot for Remington Firearms at one of their new product seminars. And I had met Mike Scobie out there, and he was at that time the editor of Peterson's. And so then I had sent him my portfolio at the time that I had, and that's how him and I met. And then that's how he introduced me, or like, you to me. And that's like, we had a little conference call, and you guys were like, hey, can you be in British Columbia like next week? Yep. So, that's kind of how all that went down.
And for me, I'm just, I'm working at Peterson's Hunting as a, managing editor or whatever, second in command to a guy named Mike Scobie, who you and I both know to be a legend in our own mind, and probably his own mind, and our minds too. Just a great dude, and Peterson's Hunting magazine is I think the largest hunting only publication that is in this country as far as subscribership goes. So it's for me as a hunter, somebody, a journalism student and a hunter, I've arrived at a place in my life where I'm working as getting paid to go hunting, write about it, produce a magazine for everyone, my fellow hunters. And at this point, I think I've made it. This is it. And I think during that time of my career, this was the culmination of all the work I'd done to that point. And I wanted to. We had written the year before. We had done a "Eat What You Kill" cover that had it just said "Eat What You Kill" on it, and it had a knife that our mutual friend Lee Cho shot for us. Had a knife with a backstrap on it and a bunch of blood on this hand, and it was seen as kind of a little bit controversial, but also a way kind of pushing our community to think about things differently. I was proud of that cover. I know Mike Scobie was proud of it too. And so we wanted to follow that up with something even more jarring, even maybe more different, and probably not controversial is not the right word, but more diverged from what you normally see, like a big buck on every hunting magazine cover. So that was where we were trying to figure out how to follow up this cover. And I just said, and at this point, I had talked to Ranella the year before when I was writing the article for the original Eat What You Kill cover on Peterson's, and he had pointed me towards Joe Rogan. And I interviewed him for that story. He only made a little sidebar because the interview was like 3 hours long. I just called him randomly. He's like, call Joe Rogan. And I was like, you mean the Fear Factor guy? What? And so I called him. And just as you can imagine now in his podcast fame, we talked, I don't know how long we talked for, 3 hours. We talked about wolves in World War II. We talked about everything you could possibly think of. And I ended up writing a sidebar on the subject for this article in Peterson's Hunting. And so I felt like, at the time, well, I didn't really get all that. But he had also talked about wanting to go do more hunts. And I said, man, well, we should go hunting. And so when this idea for the second cover came around, I was like, well, it's got to be Joe Rogan. And we got to take him to do something where he can get the most meat out of one single trip. And so then the idea came up, moose. That's the perfect way to go. And so I called Joe, asked him, said, hey, man, you want to go hunt moose, British Columbia? He said, hell yeah. You tell me when, and I'll try to make it happen. So we were like, well, we got to go. I think that was in late October. So we had a couple of weeks, got on the horn with Mike Hawkridge, who I knew from a mutual friend who's up in Quesnel, British Columbia, who runs an outfitting service up there, and gave him a call. He's like, yeah, dude, I'd love to. I'm a huge UFC fan. I would love to have Joe Rogan come up here. I would do anything to make that happen. Here's some dates you guys can come. We called Joe. He miraculously was available those dates, and then we were like, holy shit, now we got to have somebody photograph this thing. We kind of work backwards. And so we're like, and Scobie says, hey, man, I know this. I met this guy, this young kid at I'm like, well, he's my age. Are we both kids? I met this young kid at an event. He'd be perfect for this. And we called you, and it was like, boom, you were there. And knowing how this all came together, afterwards, like when we're eating this moose heart, how good it felt. Like all this stuff seems serendipitous in a way for this trip, because I didn't know you, I didn't know Joe other than the interaction I just described, and I did know Mike Hawkridge other than the interactions I just described. So it's literally 4 people coming to shoot what I felt at the time was a very important cover for hunting and for our magazine and just for my career. For you, the same thing, as an up-and-coming photographer, to get a chance to shoot a cover, number one, but a cover of Joe Rogan, number two, and for Mike Hawkridge, for his guiding service, to be able to be a part of that. So we're all coming together for a very important thing. and it turned out to be legendary. And it could have gone so many. We could have got there, and Joe could have been, a dick, or Mike could have just not had it set up right, or I could have, been awful, or whatever. Anything could have gone wrong. But man, it didn't go wrong. And the things that did go wrong are just kind of swept under the rug.
I feel like we guys got super lucky with that whole trip, and just like you said, just how it all came together. And like I'm going back through photos right now, and like as we're talking, and just kind of like remembering the trip. And man, I was a horrible photographer at the time you guys hired me. I mean, I was truly like just up and coming. Like I was really just getting my feet wet. And so, fortunately I was able to shoot a photo good enough for that cover. And, I think it's one of my, definitely one of my favorite shots I've ever taken. But just looking at some of the other stuff that I shot during the trip, it's like, we've all come a long ways since then.
It's like one of those, it's also one of those trips, right? That was the start of a lot of things, the start of my finding my way here, the start of you finding your way to where you are. I think, because like you said, I mean, I was just a writer for a magazine at that point. Nobody knew who I was, and I didn't intend for anybody to, other than in the context of I wrote for this magazine. I wanted it to be good. And Joe Rogan was talking to us the entire trip about this podcast that he had and how he thought it was doing really good, and it was just an amazing thing, and he was just kind of him and his buddies at that point, and how millions of people were listening to it, and I'd never, even at that moment, would have realized what it is today, and where we all are today after the whole thing went down. So it's just a weird coalescence of all these things. I've always felt that it drove a lot of my career. Did you feel like this thing kind of was something that just snapped and became more than just a trip?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When that cover hit, it really helped catapult my career. Just mostly from people knowing my name as a photographer. So it definitely helped me, like, probably skip a few steps that I normally would have had to take to get to where I am today.
Right.
Just in that, just spending a week in British Columbia.
Yeah. And I see these photos now. I'm looking at the article on peachandsunny.com, and I see these photos, and I'm wearing like all this shitty, I don't want to say who made it, gear that I would never wear today. And like, I've learned so much about hunting from this moment. I'm so much more dialed with how I go through hunting from 6 years ago that it's ridiculous. It's not even funny. When I look at like what I was wearing and the mannerisms, same with Joe. I mean, Joe, he had a bunch of Sitka gear on, but he was a novice hunter when we all met up there. And now, man, he's one of the better bow hunters that I know. And so he's come so far in that time, and not to mention his podcast and what he's done with that. That goes without saying. That goes without saying. He's become a sort of a god within the podcasting space, and such a leader in our culture. And so anyway, we should probably get to. I remember showing up there. I think I was the last one to get there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And
I'd actually like to tell. I'd like to talk about my trip up there.
Yeah, give it to us.
So we got, you and Scobie and I got off the phone, and basically it was like, you book your own flights, and then we'll, like a lot of times, book my own flights, get reimbursed at the end. So I booked my own flights, but the best flight that I could get in there to actually make it on time was I landed late the night before everybody else was getting there. And then nobody else was showing up until the next afternoon. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I'm flying up there with all my camping gear. I'll fly into the airport, crash on the airport floor, and then just wake up, have breakfast in the airport, wait for everybody to roll in. Well, no, they closed the airport at night up there. So I got off the plane, grabbed all my stuff. I'm walking around looking for a place to set up and sleep. And the security guard goes, what you doing? I was like, oh, I'm just looking for a place to sleep. The rest of my group isn't getting here till tomorrow. And he's like, oh, no, we closed the airport. So in true Canadian style, somebody overheard this interaction, and they just offered up to give me a ride into town. where I could book a hotel room. And so I got a ride with some nice family that had just come back from some trip, and they took me into, cause where'd we fly into? Prince George?
Yeah. Prince George. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they gave me a ride into Prince George, and I got a hotel room, and then I had to go back out to the airport the next day to wait for, the Hawkridge family to pick me up, and then for Rogan to roll in. And then you showed up last.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many. Now, even I was just going to Mike's website to look. There's a couple things about his outfitting business, so we could get that right. We could tell people about his business. And there on his homepage is the cover of that we shot, and a quote from Joe Rogan about Mike Hawkridge. So I figured I could probably just read that to you, because we need to kind of give people who Mike is, because he's one of my favorite people in the world. Mike Hawkridge is an outstanding hunter. This is from Joe Rogan. Mike Hawkridge is an outstanding hunter and a man amongst men. He's a rock-solid outdoorsman, has knowledge of the animals he's going after, and the terrain they live in is unparalleled. If there's ever a zombie apocalypse, he's one of the first people I would pick to help form a squad of able-bodied people to help save humanity. When you meet him, get a good look at him and take it all in, because if this ever-feminized world we're living in this ever-feminized world we're living in, real men like him are the last of a dying breed. I had a fantastic time in camp with him, and I look forward to visiting and hunting with him as many times as I can before I leave this earth. Joe Rogan. And that is legitimately how we all felt after leaving this. I felt the same way. I felt the exact same way as Joe did. And on Mike's website, it's bigcountryoutfitters.ca is his website. If you ever want to go take part in one of these badass moose hunts, you'll see the indelible image of Joe Rogan hawking a big-ass moose hindquarter over his shoulder. We'll never. So we'll get to that. Probably to end this story, that's probably where we'll end. But that's Mike Hawkridge is a statue of a dude. He's got like a stone jaw. He lives in it's north of Quesnel, British Columbia, which is just timber country. As Sam said, it's big cut blocks, moose everywhere, and it's just a rural place. And this is a guy who cuts horses, who just lives this outdoor lifestyle to the fullest, man. And he's been doing it for over 50 years. And he outfits for elk, grizzly, mule deer, whitetail deer, black bear, cougar, wolf, lynx, coyote. But Canadian moose is the thing that I think he's known for. And really that north central region of British Columbia is known for too.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land? Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
So what was your first feeling of Mike Hawkridge?
He's a mountain of a man.
Yeah.
Like he's just like from head to toe, like just built like a brick. And like, but like, you know, again, like a true Canadian, like the nicest human you've ever met.
And Joe's the same way too. He's got an infectious laugh that you just can't get out of your head, man.
Mm-hmm. So. Yep. But you can tell, you could tell he's just a guy you would never want to mess with or piss off. I think at one time, or he wasn't still boxing, but he was a boxer at one point.
Oh yeah.
And,
a lot of boxing stories.
Yeah. And then if you go back through, his social media pages, there's a picture of Mike carrying out an entire like giant black bear on a frame pack. 350-pound bear or whatever, just like strapped to a frame pack, hauling it out. So he's just one tough guy. And I think, isn't he like on some show now up in Canada?
Yeah. So he's on a show, I believe, I want to say it's on the Travel Channel, Discovery Channel. He called me and told me about this not long ago, that he was going to be on a show. I'll try to find that. We'll look that up and figure out what that is. But now, yeah, he's a superstar now.
Yep.
This is back when he was just Mike Hawkridge. But he just didn't, doesn't like to hug. We would try to hug him. We ended up like breaking him down eventually, and he did allow us to hug him. but when we first got there, he was like, I don't hug, I do handshakes, and the dude could rip your hand off. He's got baseball mitts for hands.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, and the way you hunt up there is, as you said before, man, you just get in a truck, you drive from timbered cut block to cut block. There's this vast country. I mean, there's logging roads to every point you could try to get to. And for all the reasons we already said, we show up there at probably not the prime time. We're in the, you say post-rut, I'd say we're like post-rut. We're like the vestiges of the rut are still hanging around. You may find a bull here or there that might want to come into to call, but it's just not the prime time to be up there. It just happened to start getting really cold when we were there too. We had a bunch of snowy days when we were up there, so we just didn't hit it at the right time. And I remember being the first time we all got in the truck together, we were still having a great conversation, but I was just a little bit nervous about how this was all going to play out, because I was realizing at some level how much of a roll of the dice I had made with my career, with this exact trip. Whoa, man.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Yeah. My apologies.
Corona.
Corona.
I hope you don't have it. Anyway, but I was realizing how much of a roll of dice I had made. I'm like, I don't know this outfitter. We're not here at a great time. The weather's not great. I don't know anything about anything here. I'm just really just hoping that some part of this turns out, because I need to get a cover shot. We need to have something happen so I can write a cover story. And we're hoping to kill any moose. We didn't really have any. We're like, hey, this is the eat what you kill movement. We're going to shoot any moose that's legal. And luckily for us, we could really shoot any antlered moose. So that was good.
Yeah.
What was your feeling in the beginning?
And I don't know if Mike, he pulled me aside, and he was like, so what do you think they're looking for the cover photo? And me, just being, a naive new photographer, growing up with every hunting cover, being some giant animal. I just assumed that was the goal. And so I think I probably made Mike nervous And I was like, well, I'm assuming that they're looking for some, big ass moose. And I could see the look on his face, like, oh God, it's like November, like we'll see if we can pull this off. And then a couple days into the trip, I think both you and Rogan, just expressed like, oh no, anything with antlers, like we're gonna shoot.
Yeah, because Joe had he had been to the Missouri Breaks with Steve and company to film Meat Eater, and that's the only hunt he'd been on. And this is not too long after that. Now we're out, and he's just learning about these things. And I just remember, and now that I know him better, I know that he's like this with everything. But I just remember him being so excited at every point to learn everything, how to shooting a rifle, his Sitka gear that he had on, all this stuff. I mean, he just was enamored with everything, and that I had never seen anything like that before. I never experienced somebody that was so into it. But now, years later, I know him a little bit better, and I know he's like that with everything. But I'd never known that, so I felt the same energy. Like, man, this is there's something going on here. Even though through the first days, I don't have any real memories for the first couple of days other than laughing in the truck, talking about psychedelics, talking about, whatever, fear factor stories. Who the hell knows what we talked about? But, 2 days riding around the truck, getting out, walking on the roads, calling, going on long hikes, 3-4 mile hikes. We did see one bull, I feel like, up in the top of a cut block. It would have been impossible to get to. But over the first 3 or 4 days of this hunt, we didn't have much action at all. I mean, there just wasn't.
No, it was real slow.
And then, even though we're having a good time, even though all of us together are enjoying ourselves, we don't, the anxiety builds for me. I'm sure for you. Like, I'm thinking, this is gonna suck if we don't even see a moose. What are we gonna do? Because I always had in my mind an image of the cover I wanted to shoot. And it was very close to what we ended up with. But it wasn't a moose quarter. I had him holding a knife in one hand and a backstrap in another hand. And it said, "Eat what you kill," really big down the side. And the nameplate for the magazine. So that's what I had in my mind. And I'm like, well, if we don't kill a moose, what am I going to do? Like a ham sandwich? So yeah, I mean, it was a struggle, and we got some photos, but it wasn't like it's not a picturesque place compared to some other places you and I have gone together. So I'm sure for a young photographer, you're like, shit, man, what's going to happen?
Yeah, no, and it was hard for me, because we were riding around in the truck so much. I shot about, a third or less of the photos than I typically shoot on a trip like that, because what do you take photos of, we're just riding around. There's nothing exciting. You can shoot a few photos, but there's nothing exciting after the first day. And so I just, going into it, and we were talking well, if we didn't kill a moose, maybe, Rogan would stay longer, or you both would stay longer. And I had a date that I needed to fly back, and it was oh man, what happens if I'm not here to actually shoot the cover photo? This is going to be a nightmare. So
yeah, and I mean, I had a moose tag, but that to me at that point didn't matter. The moose we already covered that I ended up killing wasn't a big deal to me. I was because if I, just to explain a little bit more the pressure that I was under. I'm a young, second in command editor at a magazine. I've begged and pleaded for my bosses above Mike Scobie to let me try to pull this off. They have. There's one individual that just straight up looked me in the eye and said, "I'm not paying for you to do that." That's nobody cares about that person. That's just another celebrity guy that you're gonna try to put on a cover. That's pandering. You should come up with a better idea. And I said, "No, you don't understand. This is a good idea. I know it seems like we're just going to take a picture of a celebrity guy who actually hunts, but it's more than that. There's something here. I'm telling you. I remember arguing this, and finally getting the green light. But they were like, "Don't spend a lot of time and don't spend a lot of money." And I was like, "Oh, all right. Thanks for the confidence."
I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah. So I was like, well, it's one of those points for me. If I come back with nothing, I don't know. They might just let me go. They might just be like, well, you had your chance and you screwed it up. Who knows? So
fortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So when we get to the point where Joe actually shoots a moose, it is the least Oh man, it's the least climactic killing of an animal I've ever been a part of, maybe. But
I would say that's true.
yeah, like the actual mechanics of what happened, the details are the least exciting thing I could describe. But where we all were, the anxiety that I felt, that Joe felt, that you felt, I'm sure Mike felt it too, how such a good a time we were having all together. Like, we really wanted it for Joe. Everybody really, really, really wanted this for Joe. And we also really wanted to do our jobs, all four of us. We could tell the story in 5 seconds. We're driving down this. We go through a cut and into kind of a timbered area. Well, that's on the way back to the little camp that we're staying at, the little house we're staying at. We kind of break into the timber from this cut block, and we're going down the road. I almost remember that we were laughing about some sort of psychedelic adventure that Joe had. Or we were laughing about something. We were doing what we were doing the whole trip, kind of laughing and bullshitting. And Mike Hawkridge slams the brakes on this truck, and the truck is this old shitty. I don't even remember, like Ford something or other. It's not it's like it creaks to a halt. It's like creaks to a halt. Slams. He goes, "There's a bull." We look out the left side of the window, and there's a bull, but it's a forker. It's like a year and a half year old forker moose. It's essentially the youngest moose we probably could have shot. And I remember I'm in the back at this point, or no, I'm in the front seat. And I'm trying to get out, and I can't. Before I do anything, I hear Mike say, like, "You want to shoot one? You want to shoot that one?" And Joe's out of the truck with his rifle before.
Well, I think, I don't know if you remember this, but Mike goes, "There's a bull," and we all start looking, and he goes, "It's not very big." And Rogan goes, "I don't give a shit."
Yeah.
And, because we were there to shoot a bull. And, like you said, like the next step, we were just out of the truck and, like it was done.
It was over.
But continue.
Yeah, it was over. No, I don't want to tell the whole story myself. But yeah, man, it was, from my perspective, I roll around the back of the truck, and by that time, Mike's already pointing in the timber. I mean, this thing's like 75 yards away, right? I mean, it wasn't far away.
Yeah.
Standing there looking at us, right, like, there. What are you doing?
Yep.
And we're just off the road. We're like down the road a bit into the woods, but we're still, I mean, you could still throw a rock at the truck and hit it every time. We're down into the timber a little bit, and Mike's pointing at this bull. Joe is trying to get a scope on. He probably had to dial his power back to get a freaking field of view where he could see this thing. Finally sees it, and by the time I get to his side, and I think you're there trying to snap some photos of this, he just shoots and the thing falls, and he just drops it immediately. And this all had gone down in, I don't know, 30 seconds. I don't have a minute.
Yeah, if that. Yeah. So, yeah, I did. I don't think I even got my camera turned on by the time the thing was dead.
No, it was from the time he said
he shoots it, and he turns to me and goes, "Did you get that on film?" I was like, "No, man, I barely even had my camera out."
And then, like, the thing falls over immediately. And, Mike Hawkridge, being just kind of like this stone-jawed, just really serious guy, I remember he'd be the first one to kind of like scream out, like, "Yeah!" And then Rogan and I, like, he makes his rifle safe. We made sure of that. And then immediately it was like we won the Super Bowl. I would never.
Oh, yeah.
We were just running around like some barbaric yelps in there. Like it just was unbelievable. Like, what's your memories of that thing?
Yeah, no, it was just like that moose dropped, and it was just high fives and hugs, and just like everyone was just a little kid again. Yeah. Like, and the excitement that Rogan had the entire trip, like for him, like being such a new hunter, like everybody had that going.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing, man. I'm trying to find, yeah. Okay. I got just the part. I'll read you guys kind of what I wrote in the article. The article for Peterson's. Rogan's posture stiffened, his eyes locked on his target. I watched him make the mental decision to squeeze in a split second. And he was shooting a 300 rum at this thing. There were like 300 Win Mag.
Yep.
It's like diminutive moose for moose, for all bull moose in the world. His 300 windbag rocked the timber with a familiar roar, and things went silent. The bull crumbled at 75 yards. Just then, as Rogan let loose with the primal celebration, things seemed to slow down. I think I realized why we both made the trip. Hunting had somehow been changed. Its purpose had morphed. We weren't chasing a trophy, and there was no singular joy in the grip and grin photos. The byproduct of this badass eat what you kill movement, or this a badass adventure, was the meat, and it was the perfect moment for the eat what you kill movement. After things calmed down, I sat with Joe in a freshly downed tree, its bark still ripe and wet. The moose that lay in front of us was no great trophy. He would make no record book. He would not look right on the cover of this magazine. The final moments of the hunt would seem anticlimactic to most, but we never felt happier or celebrated harder. The transformative properties of becoming a full-fledged eat-what-you-kill convert had taken hold. Our thoughts now turned to the most important outcome. Rogan had already had his knife in hand. "Let's cut him up and eat him," he said, turning to me with a determined glare. "It's time to get to work." And work we did. Hours spent gutting, skinning, quartering, and hauling meat were done with pleasure, all a part of the honesty of our efforts. The next day, I tagged a bull of my own. The celebration mirrored the previous day. I had never been happier to be a part of a hunting crew. That night, we dined on the aforementioned organs. Rogan manned the grill, doling out slices of moose heart. We partied hard. I've hunted all my life, putting wild meat on the table for as long as I can remember. With this new perspective, this departure from the norm had an impenetrable logic. Kill what you eat what you kill. No matter how you phrase it, it's a game changer. Just ask Joe Rogan. That's the end of the story I wrote. That's not too bad. You know, you write things and you look back on it, you're like, oh, fuck, how lame are you? Like, it could be worse.
I thought that sounded pretty good.
Yeah, man. You know, it could be worse. I read a lot of stories I wrote at this time of my life. I'm like, holy hell, learn how to calm down a little bit, O'Brien. But yeah, but like all that is kind of true to how I remember it, man. I know we filmed a little video, Joe and I talking. You filmed us talking kind of about the experience, and it was just weird. The thing that happened in the end was the least, you know, kind of like the least celebratory type of kill, but the most celebration of the kill, which is really kind of what we were going for anyway, at least what I envisioned.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we got back, we got back to camp with our moose. We had to pack it out all of 100 yards.
Yep.
It was easy. 100-yard pack out. We get back, and now we've got this moose, and we've got to shoot a cover with it. And I'll let you take it from. I'll let you try to take it from work, because that. I would just say this: Joe didn't want to do this cover shoot because I hadn't shot a moose and we only had a certain amount of time left. So he was a little aggravated that we were wasting time.
Yeah, no. I mean, aggravated is a good, not even a good enough word for it. Like, he was just pissed off that we were having to use any time when somebody still had a tag in camp.
Yes, and
so. Like, he was like we were out there, kind of got the photo all set up. So like, I've got photos of, Mike kind of like standing in place, like holding the stuff. And like, we moved a whole bunch of boards, like to do a different backdrop against this barn. Like, we were trying to come up with some different stuff. And, so like you were I got photos of you standing in place and Mike standing in place. And then obviously Rogan out here, and I've got photos of him, standing with the backstrap and the knife, like you said, like kind of what was the vision in your head. And then eventually, the photo that we went with against kind of like a much like lighter background on the top of that little hill. But no, I mean, like, and I have a video too of it, like us kind of like having the shot all prepped, and, there's some Luke Bryan playing in the background, and
that was a big part of the trip too. I remember
that was a big part of the trip. But no, there's video, like that song's playing, and both you and Rogan are dancing at one point. So we had a pretty good time. But no, it was like
I'd like to see that video.
Pressure on me because it was my first cover photo, and so I was just, trying to figure out like, okay, what, how to shoot this, how to frame this. And looking back on it, like, I definitely would have done things differently, like knowing now what I know now.
Yeah.
But just happy that it did turn out the way it did.
Yeah. I mean, the vision in my head, we took all these boards from where that was behind a barn, put them in a backstrap where Joe was going to stand with a knife and a backstrap. And that was the idea. He was just going to be kind of standing there, and it wasn't, don't smile and shit, just stand there. And I remember we were taking him. I'm like, that just doesn't, I don't think that's going to work, man. Like it could, it might, but I just don't feel like we got to try something else. I don't know. I remember who had the idea for him to just be holding the moose quarter. Who knows? But at the point, I remember at the point where we were doing the shoot at the top of that little hill with the actual photo we ended up using. I remember Joe like telling Hawkridge, "Go get the truck and get it ready."
Yep.
I don't want to.
Over it.
He was over it. He's like, "We got it. Whatever. We don't got it. I don't care. Ben needs to shoot a moose." Just to the type of person he is. He wasn't doing that because he didn't want to do it. He was doing it because it was foolish not to be hunting while we had time for hunting. He thought that was silly. And so you got a pissed off subject. You got me trying to figure out, like, what is this even going to be? And I don't know how many photos. How many photos did you take of the shot where it ended up? I mean, you can describe kind of what it looks like, too, for folks that haven't seen it.
Yeah, so basically, like, we kind of moved over into this little pasture area, just this short grass. And I got real low and then had Rogan stand kind of on the top of this hill. And so it's got, a nice like white background behind him in the quarter and just the short grass in the foreground, just a lot of room for all the words and everything that needed to go on the cover. And then, I think I shot, it wasn't nearly as many as it was in front of the other like ideas that we had. So, I probably only took, it's like 25 shots in that location.
Yeah, for a cover shoot, like the 25 shots, we probably shot 500 in the other location that we set up.
Absolutely.
And so we just took this as like a last ditch effort and like throw that moose quarter over your shoulder and let's see what we get. And we mocked up all the photos, and I remember seeing this and seeing Eat What You Kill really big down the left side of the page. And seeing Joe just kind of like, I think his face is like that because he's pissed. He wants to go hunting. But at the end of the photo, it just looks like, I mean, I remember all the commentary afterwards, like somehow we had described, like we had designed it this way. He's wearing a First Light top and Sitka bottoms. I remember getting so many comments from people like, thank gosh you did that, trying to go against the sponsor. I was like, no, that's just what he was wearing. We just didn't tell him what to wear,
Yeah, we didn't plan that.
No, he just was wearing that, and he would have punched us in the face had we tried to make a wardrobe change at any point. And so, yeah, man, and I don't know, we just said pick that up and see what it looks like. And after all said and done, that's the cover of the April-May 2015 cover of Peterson's Hunting. And certainly I'll share that. We've all shared it a million times. Every time we share it, it just gets, people just go nuts because it is. Yeah,
it seems like it blows up more every year. I think it's coming right up. It's typically, I think, towards the end of March is when.
It's like our yearly thing where we look back on this and share it to everybody and be like, remember this?
Yep. Remember this? This
because it
happens.
really is, man. I couldn't, the best way to start like these THC daily quarantine podcasts for me, I was like, man, I just want to tell stories. I've done so many cool things outside of my life, and sometimes on the show, on our regular show, we get into controversial topics or controversial guests and other silly jokes and stuff, and too often forget about hunting stories, man, and what they mean to our lives and kind of where not only the hunt in this case, because obviously as soon as we were done shooting these photos, Joe had us in the truck, and then the story we told at the beginning of the podcast happened. I mean, literally, we were fresh off the photo shoot.
Yeah, it was like hang the quarter back up, get in the truck, we were out, and then we were back with yours.
An hour and 20 minutes, we were back with mine.
The other people that were still back at camp, like when we came rolling back in, they were like, "Oh, what'd you forget?"
We got a moose.
And,
so and all the drunkenness and crazy stuff afterwards. But hunting stories being how they are, not only is this a hunting story about a moose, but like there's so much about this, as we were saying before, that just, I don't know, so much serendipity. There was so much like transformative things that happened there. People I met you, we become good friends. We've adventured all over the world together. I met Joe. We've become good friends and gone all over the place and hunted together. And through Joe, I've met so many people. I just couldn't imagine this not have happened in my life, or where I'd be if this hunt got canceled the day before or something.
Yeah, no, and it's really hard to know kind of where I'd be at without being given the opportunity to go up there and shoot that photo. like we said earlier in the podcast, I think it was just for all of us, kind of just a big stepping stone in in this world of hunting and cooking and, everything that we're up to.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say that one thing that I remember about this, people always ask about, you and I both have hunted with some really, notable individuals, right? People that a lot of people admire. And after this was all over, Mike Hawkridge is another person I admire. He doesn't have to be a celebrity. He and his wife drove Rogan's meat down to L.A. from British Columbia. That's no short drive, because we didn't have time to really get it all on the plane, and it was all a huge thing. They drove his meat down to L.A., which was a huge task to do, just to drop his meat off from his moose. And then, a couple weeks after the hunt, I get a call from Joe, and he's like, "Hey, how much does a hunt like that cost?" I said, "Well, for us, it's Mike just, it was nothing for the publicity. He was doing it so he could get, some notoriety for his business around the magazine. That's not uncommon in our industry." And Joe said, "Well, yeah, that's fine, whatever, I don't care. But how much if I was going to pay for a moose hunt like this, how much would it be?" And I told him it's not cheap, thousands of dollars, many thousands of dollars. And I told him, I was like, all right, I'll look it up, and I texted it to him. And then I get a call maybe a week or two later after that from Mike Hawkridge. He's like, "Man, I just got a check from Joe for, whatever, $9,000. I'm like, what? He's like, "Yeah, I got a check from Joe." And a little note in it just said, "You earned this, best hunt of my life," or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it said. But that just goes to show the kind of dude we're dealing with here with Joe Rogan. So people that ask, like, what kind of guy is he? That's it. That's what it is.
Yeah, just straight stand-up guy.
And Mike Hawkridge is the same exact damn way. and so it's just a good example of, like, even though there was cover shoots and all this other stuff that surrounded this, it was just a good time with some really great people. And that's how I remember it, but it became more than that in the years after. So anyway,
yeah, it's still one of my favorite hunting trips of all time.
Yeah, for sure. And let's go back. Let's go. I'd love to go back. We're all way busier than we probably were then. At least we think so, at least this point. But I'd love to go back up there and just, even though, I'd love to go to the Yukon and kill a moose. I would love to go other places, Alaska, whatever. There's something about like that this experience exactly. Doing it again would be great.
Yeah, I would agree.
Awesome, man.
Make it happen. Reunion tour.
2021, maybe. All right.
Yeah, sure.
Post quarantine reunion tour.
That's right.
I love it.
Yeah,
dude.
post quarantine.
Post quarantine. All right, brother. Well, I really appreciate it, man. Spending some time with him. I didn't know how long these stories would go, but this one was it needed the time. It needed the time to be told.
This was a good one.
It's a good one.
This is a good one.
So this is the first ever THC Quarantine Daily, and we're going to be back tomorrow with another great guest. I got a bunch of people in the hopper here. We got Remy Warren. Hopefully, I shot a couple of texts around to guys like Cam Haynes and Steve Ranella, and old Cal, Ryan Callahan's going to be in here. We're going to have Mark Kenyon in here talking. So we're going to tell stories. We're going to have a good time. We got some more contests we're going to announce next episode. Some other fun stuff, some really interesting stories, all the way from Bulgaria to Dominican Republic to New Zealand, a bunch of places we're going to discover. Until this goddamn quarantine is over, I'm going to be in this room ripping out hunting stories with folks like Sam and many others. So please stick around with us. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Peace.
The Hunting Collective with Ben O'Brien is a part of the Meat Eater Podcast Network. It is produced by Corinne Schneider and engineered by Phil Taylor. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, themeateater.com, or anywhere podcasts are downloadable. Wherever you listen, leave a 5-star review and subscribe.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. After 3 years of work, our follow-up to the Meat Eater Fish and Game Cookbook is here. It's the Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, campfire, and camp stove. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside, from grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Get your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com or buy it wherever books are sold.